Good morning to all of you. It is always an honor, but a pleasure as well, to be part of Delphi Forum, even if we cannot be next to each other and looking each other. I will open the discussion with the words of Mr. Grandi, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. So he said, even if ever we needed reminding that we live in an interconnected world, the novel coronavirus has brought that home. But Mr. Koumoutsakos, starting from you, the coronavirus brought so many new problems as well. Treating and protecting refugees has always been more than difficult, even before COVID-19. But which are the new main problems we need to tackle now?
First of all, let me say good morning to everybody. As you said, it's an honor to participate in Delphi Forum, uh, which has become, I would say, an institution of political dialogue and exchanging of ideas on particularly important issues, like the one we are going to treat and discuss today. Um, before answering your question, I would like to stress something that it is really important because it is in the heart of the migration challenge. How a country, a democratic country, a European democratic state should meet this challenge. Because we need to respond to two very important priorities. How to strike the balance between respecting human rights, respecting international conventions and European principles, and at the same time protecting efficiently, effectively national security and public order, defending borders. This is I would say, the essence, the core challenge of the overall migration challenge. Having said that, and coming to your question now, what is important in the post-COVID era is how to protect both local communities and migrants. And this is a challenge that needs daily efforts. Daily efforts like those this government accomplished during the COVID alarming phase. Because out of almost 100,000 migrants, we had no more than 200 cases. And they were traced, isolated according to the rules, and we managed not to have a wider spread of the pandemic between the refugees and migrants in Greece. And we had no death among them. So now we are passing to a new phase, how we continue to implement a policy that it was very effective. And the main challenge is how to deal with the possible new arrivals. Because every new arrival should be led to a quarantine place for 14 days. And this is the main challenge that we are going to face, because neither the rhythm nor the number of the arrivals can be predicted. So you need many places for quarantine for a long period and very well organized reception capacities. So this is the challenge that we are going to face in the days and months to come, because we have to protect those arriving, but those living in the islands. It will be a constant challenge, a constant priority, and a difficult task. But we are ready, and I feel that we can assure both local communities and the international community that we are going to be effective, despite the scale and the magnitude of the challenge.
And which is the main plane for you?
Sorry?
Which is the
The
main
main,
plan? How do you plan to
the
do
main,
that?
the first priority is to have the necessary facilities
Mm.
for the quarantine of those arriving. Because as I told you, the rhythm of arrivals cannot be predicted, cannot be foreseen. So you need, let's say on Monday, a quarantine for 20 people arriving in an
Mm-hmm.
island,
Mm-hmm.
and after 2 days, you need another place
Mm.
for 50 people arriving. And this goes on.
And
And
you need
of course, the
space,
question is for how long?
new space, more space all the time.
More space, well-organized reception capacities and facilities, the presence of all the medical staff to
Mm.
provide the necessary support to those arriving. But this complicates very much an already complicated process of receiving,
Mm.
accepting uh, applications for asylum, and then treat them. So the whole process of receiving numbers of refugees and migrants becomes even more complicated. This is the challenge that we are going to face in the next months.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Logothetis will have to face this as well. But first, Mr. Logothetis, we all have the recognized refugees, and we want them to exit the camps. Okay, it was supposed to happen in April or this month, but under these new circumstances, I'm wondering if this is the right time, if the timing is right, if the societies are ready, if the societies are open now. And I have also to think that we have a risk for their health. So what are your plans?
Listen, exit is not the. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in the Delphi Economic Forum. But let's go to the question asked, since the time is limited and the migration crisis is a huge issue that you can talk for hours. So, concerning the exit that you described, this is something that is not happening only during this time. Exit
Mhm,
happens all over the migration crisis. People exit, become refugees, and leave the camps or the flats that they were accommodated. What is actually happening now is that after a very long extension period, we set up a deadline according to the Greek law, and we said that after the 1st of June, people who have already been recognized as
mhm,
refugees for a long time now, I mean, we have not made any notifications in the last 3 months due to the COVID. So
mhm,
everyone that is supposed to exit is already a refugee for at least 3 months. Many of
mhm,
those, actually the majority of those people, are refugees for even longer than a year. So we asked them, since we are going to face a big crisis if new arrivals increase, that they have to be a little bit faster in getting out of the system, as they ought to do. I have to remind to everyone that this reception system is only for asylum seekers and not refugees. Concerning the society that you asked, the Greek society has been accepting people exiting the reception system for a long time now. The restraint of COVID was the problem so far, meaning that it was really difficult to go out and find an apartment to stay in. That was the major difficulty we were facing. That is why during the COVID era, we gave an extension period. Now that the COVID era and the restriction of movement is out of the picture, I think that it's a good time to have people start to get out of the system. Mainly because, as I said, we are going to face, most probably, an increase in the influx of asylum seekers during the next 2 or 3 months, and we should have the maximum capacity that there is there in the system.
Mr. Knaus, but these days, discrimination and xenophobia are on the rise all over Europe due to the current pandemic. Governments and institutions are facing more challenges, urgent challenges, in tackling and addressing this issue. What more can be done at this time?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for this opportunity, and I want to congratulate the Greek authorities for the fact that they have actually managed in the last few months, under extremely difficult conditions, to not only contain the spread of the virus for the Greek population, but also to keep migrants and asylum seekers safe. I mean, this was not obvious that this would succeed. The trouble is that we have a situation where across Europe, most governments believe the migration crisis is over. Last year, we had around 100,000 people cross the sea, all the Mediterranean from Spain to Greece, 60,000 of which came to Greece. So for most European countries, this is a situation where they want to focus on other burning issues, recovery, unemployment, health issues. So at this moment, the key issue, I think, is to focus them, and we need to be realistic. They will not have much time, but to focus them on the few measures that are crucial to have a system that can work the next 5 years. And Greece is the center. If we manage in the Aegean to learn from the last 4 years' experience, when in 2017, you had around 1,500 people arrive each month on average in the first half of the year. If we go back to this, and if we then have the ability on the Greek islands with joint efforts to process applications within a few weeks, and crucially, and this is the key point, if we manage to restore a relationship with Turkey on this, which you cannot expect Greece to do alone. You need the big European powers to talk directly to Turkey to make an offer that is at a time of low trust in both sides' interest. We need to revive the statement of March 2016. Without this, I fear that the crisis in the Aegean will not only not go away, but could very easily get worse, because we remember, and that's my last point, between 2006 and 2015, Greece requested from Turkey to take back around 130,000 people. And Turkey took back 2,000, 1 point something percent. If we return to this kind of situation, which we had for a decade, before the EU-Turkey statement, where Turkey basically didn't want to cooperate, and there are new arrivals, and the rest of Europe doesn't actually care much, Greece and I think human rights at the European border are in big trouble.
So, in what way the EU-Turkey statement should be revisited to avoid another crisis, in order to avoid another crisis?
Well, the key thing about that statement is that it is basically, and people have forgotten this, it's a non-binding press declaration by two governments based on mutual interests. It's not love. It's not that Mr. President Erdogan wakes up in the morning and thinks, how can I help the Europeans? It needs to be in the interest of Europe. It needs to be in the interest of Greece. It needs to be in the interest of Turkey. So what I've been proposing for a long time with my colleagues is we have a massive interest that the integration of Syrians in Turkey works. This is more than 4% of the Turkish population are refugees. It's the biggest integration challenge in the history of the Turkish Republic, of new people coming in. We want these children to go to schools in Turkey. We want them to have access to healthcare. We want them to have social support, so they don't get into boats and come to Greece. So we should put on the table, and this is a matter of basically of money, a new offer, a credible, strong offer that says if Turkey cooperates as it had promised in March 2016, we, the European Union, in our long-term budget, put on the table a commitment that is serious to help the integration of these millions of people. First point. Second point, instead of having people come from Turkey to Greece, we should pick up point 4 of the statement, which was never really implemented well, and say we are prepared to take refugees from Turkey directly in return. So my proposal would be, we say to the Turks, and I know that this is something they have demanded, in the next 4 years, each year, Europeans are committed to take, let's say, 80,000 people a year from Turkey, minus the number of those who come to Greece the year before. So Turkey has an interest in stopping people coming. But we show the Turks we don't leave them alone with the problem. Now, this kind of offer needs to be made, as it was in March 2016, at the top level of European politics, and by member states who can promise to take people. So Greece, Germany, France, they need to get together. The sooner the better, because once the summer starts and once we have arrivals and there is no new commitment to revive the statement, what is Greece to do?
Okay. So, Mr. Rocco, do you think that this offer is a realistic one?
Listen, thank you for inviting me, and I see that the discussion is already getting very interesting. I would say it's interesting to see with my friend from Germany. If you see what he said, he kept mentioning EU,
You.
Europeans.
And
That is
Turkey
the
as
point.
well.
We can all blame Greece. It's very easy to blame Greece. You always find a reason to blame Greece. But at the end of the day, this is an EU project, an EU problem. We Europeans, we need to decide what do we want to do with the migration flows. And I think this is a political key issue that European countries didn't decide yet. We still don't know what do we want to do with these people. So we leave it at the countries at the border, Greece mainly, especially now that the flows from Libya have drastically reduced. Now it's mainly Greece that has to deal with it. And Greece is doing its part, but I believe there is a limit. What Mr. Knaus was saying is, what if the flows start increase again in summer? So there will be a limit beyond which it cannot be a Greek issue. It has to be an issue of the EU that can be managed only with solidarity. The solidarity among EU member states are the only solution with this. The key difference that Greece has comparing to all the other EU member states, frontline EU member states, is the EU-Turkey statement. And we are all right when we say this has to work because it's the only element that is different and gives an advantage to Greece to manage this border. But this is a statement. After 4 years from 2016, we are still managing migration on this east border through a statement, not a political commitment, a statement.
So it has to be updated.
But
Not
certainly
only
the
updated.
conditions are very different from when the statement was made. And some of the issues, I certainly there has been a decrease in the flows. So certainly there have been some results in the statement. But other points, like for example, the need to use the statement to fight smuggling and trafficking, I think that is evident when we look at the flows that are coming from Turkey. Is evident that this part has not been tackled. So there is a need to readapt it to the new reality of Greece, Turkey, and Europe.
Mr. Brunner, your company runs refugee camps in several European countries, among them Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. I know that the living standards for refugees in your camps are quite good. At the same time, as we said, most refugees coming to Greece want to travel further into one of these countries. So, do you think that these facts correlate in the sense that nice comes are a pull factor?
Good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for having me on this panel. My mother raised me to refuse to self-praise, but I might have to make it here. Yes, I do think that we are in a lucky situation that centers run by OS in Central Europe are well managed and nicer. Yes, we have 28 years of experience, good relationships with contracting authorities, high quality standards, doing our utmost to keep human rights alive and even improve the situation as much as possible. And definitely, I have to say that the balance between the 2 points Minister Koumoutsakos made between the human rights aspect and protecting national security are issues that need to be balanced, and that's what everyone's very much aware in Central Europe as well. But are these conditions a pull factor? I have to be honest with you. I don't think that any group accommodation for refugees in Central Europe, while maintaining a high standard, is a pull factor. It's still group accommodation. Refugees stay in rooms up to 8. They share bathrooms, toilets. In many initial reception centers, we have central kitchens. That means we prepare the food and meals for them. And we have strict house rules that need to be enforced for the safety and security of everyone inside and outside. So by all means, it's not luxurious. It's not a pull to be looking forward to a group accommodation for asylum seekers in Central Europe.
Mm-hmm.
What is a pull factor, though, is clearly the wealth of Europe and the hope it creates among those in the world who are not as fortunate as living in Europe. That's the fact. The standards of human rights, of our conditions of living are high. And I do hope that there is hope even in the future, because it all affects us Europeans as well. If we reduce human rights, it will first and all also impact all of
Mm-hmm.
us here in Europe as well.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Koumoutsakos, it is said earlier that we need a political strength to tackle the refugee crisis and the relations with Turkey. Do you feel that you are on the same page with the rest of the European countries?
When it comes to deal with Turkey, I think that we have a lot of support among our EU partners. This was clearly shown during the events of last March in our land borders in Evros.
Mm.
You remember the visit that we had in our borders by the head of the 3 European institutions, Commission, the Parliament, and along with the Prime Minister of Greece. That was not only about semantics. At the end of the day, it was a geopolitical event of a very important, with a very important message. Greek borders are as well European borders. And this is something that's really changed the understanding of the challenges that we are facing with in Greece. After Evros, in the events of Evros, we have to say that nothing is the same.
Mhm.
Many things changed. one of the most important repercussions of the Evros events was the fact that the EU-Turkey joint statement is not functioning as it should have functioned. And the other influence of the events is that there is no, right now that we are talking, there is no channel of communication between Ankara and Athens how to discuss these issues related to migration. Of course, always within the framework of statement. There are no contacts because Greece wants it, but because Ankara has any possibility of exchanging ideas or discussing these common challenges. So first
we
of
are
all, we
not
need to
negotiating.
restore.
We are not
First of all, we need to
negotiating
restore the channels of communication, and secondly, revisit the joint statement of 2016. It has produced some ideas on how this revision should be done. First of all, we do believe that Turkey is facing a huge burden of millions of refugees and migrants in its territory. That's why the funding EU is of particular importance. But this funding should not be a blank check. It should come with a caveat that might be the following: more for less or less for more. That means more funding for less flows, or less funding, probably not at all, if we have more flows. This could be, let's say, a new approach on how EU could fund Turkey in order to meet the challenge, the migration challenge that we have to admit that is faced with. And there are other ideas as well. For instance, joint combined operations along the Turkish coastline between Frontex and the relative Turkish authorities. Because this would be a clear message that they're ready to cooperate with Europe to face a common challenge, because this is what they say. Ankara says that migration is a common challenge for them and for EU, and they want the cooperation of the EU. If they accept joint operations at sea and land along their coastlines, this would be a very strong signal that they mean what they say, and this would be as well a push factor, helping them not to have new flows from the east, because those people coming from the east would know that it would be very difficult for them to cross the Aegean and to come and arrive to Greek/European soil.
Do you find this offer, do you find this proposal realistic, Mr. Koumoutsakos? I think it's very difficult to happen. The joint operations, it's like dreaming.
No, because listen, for them, for the Turks, it's not a negative development, because they will have three things very positive for them: cooperation with the EU, a push factor, and a funding that goes with it. And a strong message coming from Ankara that they do mean that to increase and improve their relationship with the EU. I think that everybody gains. It's a win-win if you have an open mind, of course. If you don't have an open mind and you are closed to your own geopolitical objectives that you try to serve by using migration and by exploiting the dreams of these desperate people in order to exert pressure and, why not, a sort of blackmail to Europe, this is not an offer. It's not realistic. But we should pass and convey the right messages to Ankara, and we have to see how they are going to react. If they mean what they say when they talk about common challenge and European-Turkish cooperation to meet this challenge.
Mr. Logothetis, the pandemic highlights the vital importance of being faster, of acting faster. So, is this the greatest challenge at the asylum system? Do you have
Listen,
to
being
be
faster,
even more faster? More fast.
I think that we were fast enough, and we were actually faster than anyone else. We were the ones that actually locked down the camps first, before the society of Greece was locked down. And this was really helpful. And you also have not to be only fast, but also innovative, and to think
Okay.
about the current situation in the camps. And what we thought about was actually innovative in the sense that the lockdown of the camps was not only for the inhabitants of the camps, but mostly for the visitors of the camp. What we thought and actually worked is that we are not afraid of the people that are already in the camps, but we were afraid of those that we might visit. Volunteers, members of NGOs, police officers that are exchanging, because they change every 2 weeks and stuff like that. So we tried to lock down, let's say, the camps in the sense that no one that might carry the disease inside has the ability to come, the opportunity to come in. And this is what actually worked. I have to remind to everyone that the virus cannot be born inside the camp. It has to be transmitted inside the camp. And this was our main focus. And I think this is why we succeeded in many things during the COVID virus, because we had an approach that was realistic, fast, and effective. I'm really worried now from now on, since a lot of the islands will be visited by tourists, hopefully, and we will have a lot of incoming people in the areas of the camps. This is why, and of course, we will have also an increase in influx, so new arrivals also. We have to be double cautious in comparison to what we were before, because now the danger is higher for us. Not because we are afraid that maybe people will get really sick. This is always a danger, but this is not the main thing. The conditions of the camps and the massive population that stays there is what actually worries us, that we might have a bigger expansion, a bigger communication of the disease. And this will be the problem from now on. But I think that the experience we gained so far, even with camps that got the disease, like in Malakasa or Ritsona, is a really valuable experience, and we will focus on getting things done on time.
Mr. Rocco, to what extent the coronavirus changed the conditions in the camps, especially in the islands?
You know what is with the coronavirus? I think that there was a very positive element, in my opinion, on the COVID-19, because he showed to the rest of Europe and maybe also to the Greek public that to host migrants is not just an issue of processing an asylum application. To host migrants, and especially at the rate that Greece is hosting, brings a whole set of issues. You know, it's like to have additional communities. And when you have camps like the one that got affected, that Mr. Logothetis mentioned, with 2,600 people, can you imagine if all the people get infected and they all go to the nearest Greek hospital? Then you will have a situation that we all saw in the hospitals in Milan or Bergamo, where the health system cannot cope with that. So I think that the lesson that we should all take is that it's not just a matter of giving food and waiting for the processing of an application. Yes, there is an element, and you mentioned it very well, on the need to process quickly the asylum application for the sake of the human rights of the applicants, but also for having a dynamic system that can work in Greece. But there is much more than that. And the health part is very, very critical, especially in this moment with the COVID-19. The COVID-19 in the communities of migrants has the same impact as in the Greek communities. So he has the same burden for the Greek authorities. And something positive that was done here, I think, is that for the first time, as far as I know, in Europe, the government has developed a specific plan for COVID for the migrants, showing that there is a sort of attention to this group as much as there is an attention for the Greek population. The plan has been implemented and tested. You know, it's very difficult to prepare a plan where you have such an emergency, but I would say that yes, there were some gaps in the implementation, but overall the response and the results that it has produced were positive.
I'll go to Mr. Brunner and then to Mr. Knaus again. In Greece, we are not familiar with the commercial enterprises in the management of the camps for refugees. It's not usual here in Greece. What is it that you think that the ORS could do about this?
The refugee situation for Europe is a crisis situation on those islands or in these countries where the hotspots are. And it's certainly to be witnessed that for years now, certain countries have been in the mode of crisis. It is a situation that requires emergency actions that are very expensive and in many cases inefficient. And there's no one to be blamed for that. That's the nature and the definition of a crisis. And I think it's most important for the bordering countries of Europe to get out of this crisis mode. It's one of our strengths to develop a long-lasting strategy to implement housing facilities, social work, security measures, all in a very effective and efficient way. That's, I think, one of the priorities next to the other issues and topics the panelists mentioned. The situation is a complex one, and it is not to be solved by just one action. It will take many steps, and these steps need to be coordinated, planned, and also need some time to work. And a system that's based on a plan, a system, can be and will be efficient. I think that's the issue here on our part, and why ORS key factor here in helping to get this done.
Mr. Knaus, do you think that what happened in Evros is a milestone for the European policy towards Turkey?
Well, I think what happened on Evros was it's interesting that it happened at the border where there was no agreement. The EU-Turkey statement didn't really regulate what was supposed to happen with those who crossed the border, the land border. But it was a very bad milestone in that Turkey was doing openly the opposite of what it had committed in March 2016. I mean, Turkey actually moved people to the border openly, which was the exact opposite of the statement. Now, if you have a statement that is based on not on a legal force, but on interests, and one side does the opposite of what it said it would do, the statement is gone. We will see if Turkey is now returning to the policy of taking only 200, 300 people a year, as it, or 1,000, as it used to, or if it's still committed. But what I think is important at the end is that what we know what needs to be done because we've done it before. I remember how in March 2016 the negotiations with Turkey were happening, what it took. I don't see the same seriousness at this moment in other European capitals. We know that we can persuade Turkey. We know Turkey has interests. I agree with the minister, but we need to be much more focused. It's hard work. At that time, it involved two prime ministers, the Chancellor of Germany and of the Netherlands, intensively working on it. Now, secondly, we know if we have such an agreement, the number of arrivals can become very manageable. In 2017, you had on average in the first half 1,500 people arrive each month. And if you have an effective asylum organization, you can deal with 1,500 arrivals in a month. This is possible. We know this can be done. And thirdly, we know that the European Union is able to move 20,000 people from the Greek mainland in a year because it did it before in 2017. So if you put those elements together, the kind of smart diplomacy with Turkey that we need, so that it's again in Ankaras interest. If we then have the ability to, with a lower number of arrivals, which is realistic, we had it before, if we get an agreement with Turkey, and then have faster processing, which we know could be done. And the Greek asylum system is in a different place now than 5 years ago. And if it's supported, and then we have relocation again, which is in the European interest. Those three pillars, you have a system where you protect the right to asylum, where everybody who arrives, there will be no pushbacks, there'll be no bad treatment, there will be a fast processing and returns to Turkey. So anybody who doesn't need protection in Europe doesn't come. And we have support for refugees in Turkey and relocation. Now, this has been done before. In 1979, the international community negotiated with Vietnam an orderly departure program. And 600,000 people were moved directly from Vietnam to Western countries, resettled, in return for reductions in arrivals. We had setups of camps in a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. People arrived and they were processed and then moved out quickly. The numbers we're dealing with now are much, much smaller. If there is the will, this can be handled, but the rest of Europe needs to wake up and realize this is not just a Greek problem. This is a problem of protecting human rights and the Refugee Convention at the common European border.
So, Mr. Koumoutsakos, what we are doing to make the rest of the Europe wake up, as Mr. Knaus said?
Oh, we try to keep them on board. We try to sensitize all partners. And this is a daily effort that we are making. And I have to admit that we are receiving positive messages. And this is important, particularly in view of the upcoming negotiation on the new European Migration and Asylum Pact. Now, this will be a very difficult exercise to reach consensus for a new European asylum and migration policy, because the negotiations will be held among three groups of countries. First group is the frontline countries: Spain, Italy, Malta, Cyprus, Greece, Bulgaria. That means the countries who are going to deal with the new flows. The second group is the Visegrad countries, countries who that are very reserved, if not negative, when it comes to implement a meaningful solidarity. That means a fair share of the burden, that is relocation. And then there is a third group, the let's say the destination group of countries, all pro-European countries, important countries, strong countries like France, like Germany, countries that they do believe in the value of the principle of solidarity, but they are not, let's say, that close in this issue with the countries of the first line of the borders. So these three groups of countries will be negotiating the new European Pact. What we try to do is to present, explain in details and with credibility the challenges that we are faced with here in Greece. Having a difficult neighbor and a difficult border. And we have built as well alliances. The alliance of the 5 Mediterranean countries is, I would say, very robust at this time. We have presented our thoughts, our initiatives, our priorities, and our proposals to be taken into account in the new European Migration and Asylum Pact. We have another alliance or group of countries, which are the East Mediterranean countries, Bulgaria, Greece, Cyprus. So we're preparing ourselves to participate constructively in this upcoming negotiation. What we are seeking is to counterbalance or to balance the principle of shared responsibility with the principle of tangible and effective solidarity. For us, this balance should be kept. And this would be the main aim, the main objective of our negotiating strategy during the discussions we're going to have on the new European Migration and Asylum Pact. So this is an ongoing process. We are discussing with all our partners, without exception, preparing ourselves in order to facilitate a consensus for a long overdue Europe Pact on Migration and Asylum.
Mr. Logothetis, one of the big issues is the relocation of the unaccompanied children. Where do we stand at the moment? I mean, which countries are willing to welcome these children?
You know, Mr. Koumoutsakos, the minister, could talk about that because it is an initiative that he is like most responsible of all of us. But still, I can make a comment that we are really thankful to have an opening there. It seemed that even during the COVID time, we had a response from many European countries to receive some unaccompanied minors. But we all have to stand on the same page and say that this is not only about unaccompanied minors. We need the solidarity to be expressed and resettlement or relocation to start again for other types of vulnerable people, let's say. Because, of course, it is a major big thing that we have this support on the issue of the unaccompanied minors. But still, we have other vulnerable groups that are under the reception system of Greece, which is overwhelmed. And under the COVID era, things are even more difficult for these people as well. And I think it's a great opportunity. And I don't think that this is a pull factor, because we are supposed to talk about human rights and the pull factor. Are human rights a pull factor? Are nice camps a pull factor? Is relocation a pull factor? No, it is not a pull factor, because all these are not present and people were still coming. So if a good camp or relocation or resettlement in other countries was the pull factor, the influx should have stopped 2 years ago. Still, it did not stop. People are still coming to Moria, which is a camp that was designed for 2,000 people and currently hosts around 17,000. So the good conditions of a camp, the relocation or the resettlement to Europe is not the pull factor. The pull factor is hope. The pull factor is the fact that there is no organized system all over Europe to send a clear message to these people about what is going to happen. If things change from one country to the other, then it is obvious that hope prevails. It is really difficult to stop hope. As Mr. Brunner and Mr. Kraus said, this is the major pull factor. Another pull factor should be the fact that Turkey is a safe country and they can stay there. They have the conditions and they should stay there. And this opening in Mediterranean is not an opening for every type of person that wants to leave his country and move to another country that is a little bit wealthier, let's say. So these are the issues that should be there on the table in the next few months. And we have to stop thinking as Europeans when it comes to the migration crisis, because the people that we have on the other side of the shore, on Turkey, are not Europeans. So they are not dealing with the same problems like we do. They do not want a nice shower in order to visit a place. They just want to come to Europe. So this is the major difference. Yes? Thank you.
We have just 3 minutes, so I will ask to each of you one last comment, please. Mr. Rocco.
I'll go back on what the minister mentioned very correctly. We are now discussing, or he is discussing for Greece, the migration and asylum pact. This is the policy of the EU for the coming years. It's not just asylum, it's migration. Let's not focus only on asylum, because here, even if the situation in Syria is pacified tomorrow morning, Greece will still have huge number of migrants, economic migrants coming. It's important that the EU looks at this as a comprehensive tool, not just for the refugees, because the refugee situation is framed by the convention that all European states have signed. The family reunification is settled. The issue of the students is settled at the EU level, and that's it. There is no other common framework for labor migration, and we need to regulate that. So we have to look at migration and asylum. Otherwise, we will not get out of these situations, not just in Greece, but in all the borders.
Mr. Knapf, please.
Well, I would just leave you with one thought from the experience of the last 5 years, and especially how we got to the EU's Turkey statement in March 2016. I do not believe there will be an agreement at the EU level on a functioning asylum system. The differences are so big, and some countries have no interest at all to an agreement. In 2016, it was not the whole European Union that reached the agreement at first, although everybody then accepted it because it was on the table as the only alternative. It was some countries. And I think if we are realistic, the key is that France, Germany, and a few other countries are serious and act. If the member states hide behind the European Union, we will not get a solution. Because I don't think that the European Union realistically will arrive at anything that is acceptable and helpful for Greece.
And Mr. Brunner, please, one last comment.
I believe it's not what we call a refugee crisis. It's actually a management crisis. And the key issue here is collaboration, efficiency. That's what's most important here. Working together for improving the situation on the long term and be better prepared for crises. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you who have to finish. Have a nice morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.